Hello everybody. Let's take a look at the code and apply these cascading style sheets and see how it would change the appearance of the pages. But before I start, I again want to point out the importance of the folder structure. So here, as you can see from my path at the top, I had basically created, just for simplicity, I had basically created a folder called CTS1851, and within that folder I have been creating individual lessons. So if I go back one, I have my lesson 1 and I have my lesson 2. So now we are in lesson 2. Inside my lesson 2, I have another folder called review 1, and here I have some HTML files. These are files that are available from the student download. And when I ask you to complete your cases, you should be, I also upload some of these files in a zipped format so that when you open it up, it maintains its folder structure. So if I want to open this up, as you can see, this is an HTML file. The PNG files are image files, and then the other two files are called the CSS files. So I can double click over here and this would open it up using a browser. Now remember, in the very beginning I talked about how HTML is being interpreted by the browser. So when you write your code, remember this is coming from a local computer. This is not available in the public domain. So if you send me this, okay, you need to make sure that every single file is included in here. Otherwise, I would not be able to see things here. Now, see how I have a picture here. I have some links over here, and then I have some information. You know, these are my body, my content. And in the previous chapter, we had talked about some of the layout feature of HTML, and I think that's very, very important that you understand the semantics of the layout that we are going to be using, or we are using in our pages. As I was discussing about the layouts, I wanted to refer you back to this particular picture or an image which kind of lays out some of the semantics. Now the question is, what exactly do we mean by semantics? Well, semantics, to the most simplest term, would be a term that is only used for conveying some meaning to the browser. So as you can see here, header actually means something to the browser. Navigation actually means something to the browser. However, tags like div, that really does not mean anything to the browser as such. It may mean something to the user, and that is what you would actually see in some of the evolution of the HTML. Since we are now in HTML5, you would see a lot more of the semantics being used, which means these are easy to understand for people or the users or the coders, and it would actually mean something to the browser. So when I say section and article, it actually means something. Now, how do you actually define a section? As you can see over here, section to somebody, it's going to be defines a section in a document. However, how do you actually define an article inside a section? So this is where it becomes very subjective, okay? And I wanted to bring this thing up so that you know that there are different kinds of styles that you can apply. So this, what you see over here, is not the only style. And this is why it's important when you plan your pages, it's important that you kind of have the content in your mind. And it's very important that if you're working with a client, or when you're working with your final project, when you're doing a website of your own, you should have some clear idea in your mind as to how you want to lay it out. Do you want to have a header and some navigation to the right or to the top or to the right and left? As you can see over here, this section over here, and this is just an image that I copied from Google. I just basically typed in layout, and all these different kinds of layout came up. So header, navigation, and then you have a section, and then you have an aside here. But you can see there are other styles as well, okay? And this is what is something that you would find when you're using a tool. It will come up and say, what kind of template do you want to use? Do you want to use a business template, a listing template, a blog template? And that is what they mean by here. So again, it's completely up to you. If you want to have your navigation to the left, navigation to the top, or navigation at the bottom, it's completely up to you, as long as you follow the semantics and code it correctly, right? So here is the basic page where nothing is currently applied. You see a picture over here, and you have a navigation over here. However, it does not look very attractive. So what we're going to do here is apply some cascading style sheet, which is already written out there. Okay, so let's go ahead and try to apply some of the cascading style sheet to the code. So here is my page, and I've opened this with my Notepad++. This is my editor, and here is my textbook, and this is my comment section. So as you can see over here, this is not going to be red. So I started with my doc type HTML. I defined my language to be English. I have my header. And remember, what I need to do is I need to come inside. This is an external style sheet. So I need to go ahead and add my style sheet here. And if you go back to, again, or refer to the book, you will see that the way you would do it is by saying link href, and then you would basically identify the files that you would be using for the cascading style sheet. And in our case, I would be using this file called coach_layout.css. Now, this is very, very important. If you have any questions regarding this, definitely go back and reference to the file. So this is my coach_layout.css, and also remember, this is my folder structure. Okay, so all my files are within my review one. Okay, so coach_layout.css, and then I also have another one called coach_styles_text. Okay, so this is my href file, and then again I'm going to say I'm going to add this code, and this is my style sheet. Now, as you can see over here, this is one of the use of some of the advanced editor, where you actually see a link that is given out, and also you would see some assistance. So as I'm typing these things in, it would actually come up with, what I want to choose from here, so that I don't make mistakes when I'm typing my code. So see how I'm just starting it off, and it would give me some information, and I don't need to give any space. However, the space should not matter. So again, I'm going to come in, and I'm going to coach style, I think it was called coach_style, coachstyles.css. And the same thing is rel equals style sheet. Okay, so now I have applied my style sheet here. So if I save my file, remember where I'm saving it. This is my desktop CTS 1851 lesson 2. This is my review. So this is where I'm saving my file. And now let's go back and see how this is going to render. So as I was typing the code, I had made some mistakes, and I realized that first of all, I did not have this closing tag right over here. So initially it was not quite rendering the way I would have liked it. And the second thing I realized was, when I came back to my files, I saw that my coach styles text was named as coach_styles_text.css. So it's very, very important that I name the file just like I had saved it. And also I realized that I had misspelled my coach layout earlier. So now everything is corrected. And as you can see over here, now you see that this particular file, the HTML file, is also the coach tss_coach_text.html. Now, when you go through the book, you will see that they are actually asking you to change the names of the files, but you can do it either way. Even if you do not change the names of the file, when you are referencing these things, this is where you need to make sure that you are now referencing the correct file. So everything is saved correctly. Now let's render and see how this is going to show. And as you can see, my style sheets are now applied, and it is showing it as my style sheet has been applied to it. Now, in this process, there are a few important lessons that we should have learned. One is you are going to be making mistakes, and you need to come back and troubleshoot the mistakes and make sure that your files are named correctly. Also, you would see that sometimes if you make a mistake on the code, for example, I did not close my tag over here, so it was giving me a mistake over here. I misspelled my file. This was why it was giving me a mistake over here. But once I correct everything, then the style should apply, and it would render the styles on the pages. So this is an example of excuse me, this is an example of an external style sheet being attached inside my head section over here, with just these two lines of code and associating these two style sheet that I had over here. Okay, now what I'm going to do is go back and show you another example where I would restructure, or I would manage my file a little differently and show you how I can change the code inside to if I have a different kind of a folder structure. So let's take a look at it. Before I move out to the data structure, I also wanted to show you what the cascading style sheet actually includes. So here are two cascading style sheet. One is the coach, one is the styles. And as you can see in my coach layout, coachlayout.css, this is what I have included or is included in here. So I'm basically identifying my element, and here is my body, and it tells me, and this is my opening and closing curly brackets, and within I'm specifying the layout. So I want to see what kind of a margin I would have, what kind of a width I would have, the maximum width and the minimum width. And this is also important because it will specify how the page is going to be showing on your screen. Later on, we will talk more about responsive design, because nowadays we view files in a tablet, in a phone, on a computer. So they have to be responsive, and there are some codes that we would be adding. But before we move into all those things, I just wanted to show you what it means. And this is something that we had also discussed in the prior lecture. So here is my body, and again I have a parent and a child. So I'm saying any header inside my body is going to follow these properties. And then I have body, header, and image. So anything within my image is within my header, and any image within my header body is going to have my margin and padding. Now, what is my margin and padding? Again, this is something that you can go back to the textbook. It shows you with a nice image as to what we mean by the margin and what is the padding. And again, in this case, I have a body and a navigation. So any navigation within my body is going to take on the style. Okay, so these are my cascading style sheet, and these are my my styles. Again, I do not want you to remember everything, but I want you to know how they are being applied. So this is where I can change my width, This is my within my section. I can change the width of my section, and it's important, and I encourage you to go ahead and play with these things. As you can see over here, the float is to the right, but there is a value which is left or the center, so you can change the value to the left or the center to see how it works. Make sure you play with your margin. If you do not like the margin to be with 5 pixel and 20 pixel, go ahead and change these things and see how they would change. So then you have an article, you have a body, footer. So these are all the styles that you will be seeing, and I'll get into more of the cascading style sheet in the next lecture. Now if you look at these styles over here, this one really does not have anything. This is something that you can take from either a website, because certain browsers would have certain font styles, and that is why I initially mentioned about it's important that you check your work through several browsers, and that's why the versioning becomes important. In this case, there's really nothing included in here, so it's pretty much coming from just the layout as to how you want your picture, how you want your pages to be displayed. So if you bring up your thing over here, your page over here, this is how it's rendered. Now you do see how this is floating to the left, and then you have all your sections, your content to the right. You have your navigation. This is your top header, and if you go down, you'll see this is again a picture and how this actually surrounds the picture, floating to the left. And the margin, you see this is what you're talking about, the padding and the margin, and then you have your footer all the way to the bottom.